Hello, everybody, and welcome to Star Trek New Worlds. My name is Tony. Thank you for joining us if you're joining us live. If you're catching us on the replay, thanks for taking the time. Let me take these wonderful spectacles off my face while I introduce you to what Star Trek New Worlds is all about. If this is your first time and you've never been here before wondering what this is all about, Star Trek New Worlds is a 4X turn-based strategy game that we play online here with you. We play it using the Federation and Empire rule set as published by the Amarillo Design Bureau. And we display it online here, streaming it to you live on YouTube, Twitch, and unfortunately not today Facebook, but sometimes Facebook. And we use a platform called Vassal to be able to show you the maps, which I will show you here in a moment. That's Star Trek New Worlds. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about a turn 39, actually a turn 40 reveal with some stragglers behind. We've got the Hydrans having a bumpy encounter. The ISC is going on a monster hunt, or are they being hunted? The Klingons get to play with some kitties a little bit more, and the borders continue to expand here in the game. But before we get diving into those particular topics of discussion, what do you think of this new stream layout here? I improved, hopefully, the size and shape of the text. It's a little big right now. I think I might have to change that again. Slight changes on the borders, and of course, speaking of the Orion Pirates today, a little bit of a green background for the theme. So let me know what you think in the comments as we're rolling it up. Daniel, I see, saying that he loves the animations. Really, really good. Thanks, Daniel. Let's talk about the Orion Pirates. And it's funny that that I see Daniel's post there, because Daniel is the game master for our campaign, and he controls the Orion faction. Now, Orion Pirates, as you may have seen in various kinds of Star Trek, from the original series with the green dancing Orion slaves to most recently, I guess, in Enterprise, I've seen the Orions depicted as all being green. And they've popped up a little bit in Star Trek Discovery. And of course, Lower Decks. So Orion Pirates, or the Orions, are a sort of an independent faction within the game, played as non-player characters or controlled by the GM. And they have an interesting interaction with the different player factions in the game. Orions, as opposed to normal player factions or even the minor empires that we come across, are not restricted by their sort of individual supply networks based on where they are on the map. Rather, they are a network of cartels that pepper the entire map. And as a result, they have a very far reach, and different cartels have different sort of footprints or territory within or on the map. And you can use Orions, potentially, hire them, contract them, engage some kind of business relationship with them, where you can use them as a player, use the Orions to be able to do various things. You can use them to, for example, hiring or contracting their ships to be able to engage or fight a battle for you or help support you in a specific combat. You can use them to conduct specific sort of intelligence missions that would normally be assigned to prime teams if they were going to be domestic missions, but they are missions that you can now deploy using Orions. You pay a little bit more for them, but they provide you that plausible deniability that you are engaged in any of these different activities. They are a useful tool in the game. However, that tool can also come back to bite you in the butt. We'll talk about that when we get to the Klingon turn. But suffice it to say, Orions are a double-edged sword. You can use them in sort of for your own purposes, but other players can use them as well. And there's a spectrum of things that can happen. There can be random events, which the GM will generate, that may include an Orion. So an Orion raid or some kind of activity that would preclude or sort of negatively impact your economy, maybe destroy a ship or eliminate a critical supply point for you, perhaps when you're doing survey missions trying to expand your borders, that critical sort of extension of supply provided by a tug or a convoy. They can provide perhaps sabotaging a certain kind of research and development if that's something that you want to do. They can coordinate or negatively impact happiness on another planet, or positively if they want to do that. There's a myriad of things that you can do, and basically the imagination is your limitation when it comes to coming up with this stuff. So if you can think it, chances are you can have a conversation with our GM, Daniel, if you're a player, and you can come up with some kind of way to execute it. But at the end of the day, this is a war game. We're all about fighting. The RPG element of it, the role-playing element, is something that is carefully managed by our GM, Daniel. And it is a fun element that we add to the game that adds more color, more context, and more fun for it. So we'll get into how the Orions impacted the Klingon faction in just a moment. But suffice it to say that the Klingons had an encounter with the Orions, more than one this past turn, that caused some interesting interactions. And yeah, it's going to make for an interesting little sharing of the story. But without further ado, let's quickly go to the chat. I can see lots of chat going on here with my various screens. Of course, I'm looking in the wrong direction. Let me bring it center stage here. So we can see, Dell's talking about plasma torpedoes. Okay, let's go from the top and I'll work my way down. So we can see that Bill, Jim, Paul, Dell, Daniel, of course, all with us today. So thank you guys for joining us. Let's see here. So thought green was the Hydran color. I know it's funny, the different colors associated with different factions in the game. From Federation and Empire standpoint, yes, the counters are green and the Orions are blue. And it's funny, when I look at pictures of ships, of Orion pirate ships, they all seem to be blue. Yet Orions depicted in the fiction of the world, even in the Starfleet universe, which is the original series and the animated series, not Lower Decks or Prodigy, but they're depicted as having green skin color. So hence the green theme here today. Cool Dedeski, like the visible chat. Yeah, hopefully, like I say, I'll maybe manage the size of that chat a little bit. It's not easy being green. So true, so true. The Orions get a bad rap, you might say. They are really big tools, Chuck says. Chuck, thank you for joining us. Ties are due, Jim's mentioning. And of course, the whole forget about it, gangster cartel approach of the Orions, very sort of fun to play with. Great chat, great comments in the chat today. Let's dive into the first turn that I want to talk about today. And so I will I'll open it up because it's an interesting turn. It's an interesting turn to see because of the faction that we get to see. So without further ado, here we go. Ba-boom. If you can't tell, those are the Tholians. So Big Red is on the map, and this is the shared map between the Federation and the Tholians. I'm sure a lot of folks are interested to see what's going on with the Tholians, how big or small they are, and so on and so forth. So let's dive into a little bit of around the clock, shall we? So let's see here. Let's talk about it. So the Federation on this map is a 24 income, 24 EP, and the Tholians are 28. So that's really interesting. We were talking about in the last turn for turn 38, we're talking about how the average of all the empires was ticking up. We were getting more towards this 26, 27, 28 range. And as we can see, the Tholians are now at a healthy 28, a little bit larger than their Federation neighbors, but not a dramatic difference or a dramatic delta there. The Tholians are right in the mix. And to be fair, the 28 relative to, for example, the 31.5 for the Federation, for the Klingons, or the 28 for the Hydrans. Like I say, right up at the sort of the upper end of the average when it goes for income. Let's take a quick look at their fleet cap. Fleet cap is looking good here. Federation still at 11. Interesting. 11 ship equivalents with 34-63 split. And the Tholians, big navy, 25 ships. But interesting to note, even though they've got a lot of ships, they're only at a 31-93 split. So 31 attack, 93 defense. Why is that? Well, we know that the Tholian ships are relatively weak. They have 1 or 1.5, maybe even a 2 attack, depending on the ship. These Y-era patrol craft, you can see on the map, they are a 1.5 attack, 3 defense. But the big, or the critical ability that the Tholians have is that pinwheel feature that they, especially on the defense, they can come together, 3 ships in one, and they become basically the equivalent of a base, upping their defense factor collectively, not really changing the offense other than just adding it together, but offensive factors added together and a little bump to their defense, which just makes them a harder target to take out. So interesting to see. Let's take away the ships for a second and the bases, and let's see what they got. So you can see the spread here of resources and, oh, very interesting. Okay, so we've got, of course, a number of resources close to the homeworld. The big thing here, though, is the minor planet in the echo column. So this minor planet is, it looks to me as though it was diplomatically converted, as it is indifferent, middle of the road. It doesn't seem like there's any devastation or any kind of carryover of any military action. And it's a minor planet, so it's a 3 EP planet, so 3 income. We've got 2 minor factions here, 1 Paravian, 1 Hydran. Interesting split there. So the Paravians and the Hydrans are both developing planets, meaning they have a 2 income. And of course, they're sort of on the edge, it looks like, of the explored territory of the Tholians. In addition, they've also got a wormhole. I love that. I love the fact they have a wormhole. Let's bring back the bases. Now, we were talking about Orions just a second ago. As you can see, these blue bases are Orions, and how they are sort of divided as cartels up to the GM, and we can have a discussion with the GM at some point about how the cartels are broken up or divided. But you can see here there's at least two Orion bases that's provides them reach and access to areas of Tholian space, and it'll be interesting to see whether that's all one cartel or one sort of non-player faction of the Orions, or if it's more than one. So interesting to see. You can see the base network is pretty standard from what we've seen in the sort of the typical 2-hex distribution. You can see a very clear hexagonal pattern around the capital, and then 2 hexes out in a very predictable way from there. Interesting to note that just so happens to put a base right on top of that wormhole. Interesting to see. What I do notice is a lack of any research and development team on that wormhole doing any research on it. I don't know if that means he's already explored it and he's just doing normal research and development on wormholes. But again, no specific ship that's been placed or unit that's been placed there to be able to emphasize or accelerate research and development on the wormhole tech. We can see, of course, that he's got a YFEL labeled number 2, exploring at the extended range of, looks like, supply 3, based on the position of this convoy and base. So let's just do, for a visual, Tholian. Let's do a quick representation of the supply. So at supply 3, this is what he has access to. You can see that all the hexes that are gray, but overlapping with the red, that's the stuff that he has access to explore. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops. You can notice that he's got a YFEL 3, YFEL 2, and I'm probably blind and just can't see YFEL 1. There it is. up at the top near the feds. So he's using large exploration freighters to conduct his exploration, which is interesting, meaning that he probably, and he's got prime teams embarked on those YFELs, meaning he does not have a survey ship in the early eras. And of course, he's got one, two, is there a third YFEL floating around here somewhere? I feel like I saw one at some point. But there's very obviously two YFELs conducting surveys. One, he's got YFES 5, YFES 4, maybe, oh, what am I talking about? They're right there. So there's three YFESs doing exploration on his western border. So he's maximizing his exploration ships and leveraging that. Mostly, it's interesting to note most of his ships are up near the Federation border, it would seem. And of course, he's got this fleet, a W-era patrol craft with a diplomat. Looks like he's trying to bring the Paravians over on side in a nice and friendly kind of way, as opposed to what we've seen from some other players that go in and just stomp, stomp, stomp. So very interesting to see the development of the Tholian. So what's interesting about this as a player is that the player who is playing the Tholians is the former DM, or GM, I should say, of previous iterations of the game that we've played. So very experienced player, very well versed in what we're doing. And one of the sort of common quotes from him in the past is that player skill trumps luck. And I would argue that he's a more skilled player than not. And you can see here that, you know, the Tholians are a challenging faction to play for a number of reasons. Their ships aren't necessarily powerful at this point. He's got some restrictions around exploration. And despite those constraints, he's still he's still at near the head of the pack. He's not the leader necessarily because he's got some constraints, but he's doing really well in his overall gameplay. The fact that he's got two of these developing planets that are within reach, if he really wanted to, he could stomp those two and he'd be up to 30 EP in a second. But I think a combination of his, just the impact of his ships being not very powerful and the factions that he's dealing with, it'll be interesting to see how he plays this going forward. Militant, diplomatic, or some combination of the two. It'll be interesting to see. Let's take a quick look just before I switch over to the feds. I'm going to take a quick look at the fleets for the Paravians and the Tholians. So let me just pull up the fleet first, and then I will switch back here. So we can see here that the Paravians have a fleet on their homeworld, or this minor faction developing planet, of 3 ships, a WCL, a YCA, and a YDD. So not a lot of ships, not a lot of firepower, but considering that they have a planetary ground base, a YPGB, and a base station, it's a relatively hard target for what the Tholians currently have as far as offensive capability. Remember, even though they have 25 ships, their their offensive firepower, as we can see here, is only 31. They've got a high defense with 93, but they've only got 31 offense with all those ships that they have. So, you know, something to consider, because even just this small fleet is 9 attack, 10 attack, 14. They've got 14 attack factors just in that small little place. And because of the base station, it's just a harder target to take. So that'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how that kind of goes forward. Let's also take a look at Platinum Fleet for the Hydrans. Shiny Fleets. Platinum Fleet. You can see here, Platinum Fleet, which is this faction up here, is 2 Vols and a Musketeer. So the Vols are Y-era frigates, and the Musketeer is a W-era frigate. Both, or all 3 of them, have 2 attack factors. The Vols have a 3 defense. So a much smaller fleet, much less of a hard target. And interesting to note, they don't even have a base station on that planet. So if the Tholians wanted to stomp them, they would be a relatively easy target to stomp. Also, when we look at the fleets, you can see that both of these factions are unhappy with the Tholians. They're not loving what the Tholians are putting down. So it'll be interesting to see if somebody talking about pirates. It'll be interesting to see if somebody from the Orion or someone uses the Orion faction to be able to impact that interaction. I mean, of course, it could be the Feds, it could be somebody else. We'll just have to wait and see. We know that from normal sort of storyline development, the Hydrans are sort of anti-Tholian. They just haven't seen the Tholians yet. So if there's a connection that can be made, or a piece of intelligence where they know where the Tholians are in the Tholian situation, then within the role-playing context, they can certainly do something to mess with that. But we'll see how that goes going forward. It'll be interesting to see how the storyline develops. Also interesting to note, this is the real-time positioning of these fleets. So let me just zoom out here for a sec. On this map, you can see this is the real-time positioning of these fleets. So we can get a sense of where they are relative to everybody else. We know that the Lyrans are up here. We know that the sort of like northeast of the Feds, we know that the Remans are over here and the Fearsome Four down the other side. So we're really starting to paint the picture of who's who and where everybody is. So very interesting. Let's take a second to zoom in on the Federation and see what they have going on. So we can see along the border with the Tholians, of course, we've got an Orion base station here with some ships. We've also got WCA with a prime team. Looks like they're using that for exploration. We can see a number of YCAs with prime teams, again, facilitating a combination of probably exploration and representing a little military force on the border. With the 11 ships that he has, remember that the Federation has greater offensive firepower than the Tholians. And arguably, in any one engagement, the Federations will stomp the Tholians. The only thing is they just don't have as many ships. But they do have, the ships that they do have pack a bigger punch. Depending on your fandom, they are the Mike Tyson of this encounter. They are the Francis Ngannou, if you're a UFC fan this weekend, of this particular setup or interaction. So we'll see how that goes. They certainly have knockout power. It's a matter of how they decide to use it. We can see here, though, that the chances of them going to fisticuffs is probably pretty low because there is a YPC with an R&D team at their homeworld, meaning that they're doing some joint research. R&D teams can be deployed or sent to another player's capital, and at the capital they'll do R&D. So they'll collaborate on a common sort of subject or theme of technology, and they do the GM will do random rolls to be able to figure out what they discover and when they discover it. So that's interesting. We can also see that based on their homeworld, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different cruisers with prime teams parked on their homeworld. From a conversation with the Federation player earlier this week, was able to find out that they are doing upgrades to those W era ships to Y era. Didn't realize that that was an option, but he's upgrading his WCAs to YCAs and then moving that forward. Very interesting to see that because that makes those WCAs incredibly more valuable, because if he can upgrade them all, wow, like that's going to be a huge force multiplier for him in the sense that he's going to increase by 11 his attack and defense factor without actually building any more ships. So, and of course, for the Y era CAs, they move 4 versus 3. Again, higher defense, higher attack. They're just all around better ships. So we can see if we take away the ships, and let's close that out. Let's take away the ships and the bases for a second. No significant changes to sort of the Federation economic distribution here. We can see that they've got this sort of interesting resource off on the edge, but I don't see a ship over there. It makes me think that there may have been a ship over there that got taken out. We can see that there's 2 YFELs but they're labeled 1 and 2, and I don't see another YFEL anywhere. So it might be that a YFEL was destroyed over in this area. Maybe another Orion pirate attack. We'll see. We'll see. But anyways, really interesting to see how the Federation is sort of evolving here. You can see that they are continuing to build out their base network, especially down towards the Tholians. You can see this convoy here, probably going to build a base there. This convoy moving most likely up into this direction to build bases to explore or expand their reach. And of course, the more hexes that they explore, the more chances they'll find resources, planets, and various other things. Interesting to note also that the Kzinti, or our tiger folk, are still indifferent, the colony here, and that the feds haven't done anything to stomp them. Very interesting to see how that goes. The feds seem to be playing as sort of militant pacifists. We'll see how that works. We'll see how that goes. We'll see how that goes. Okay. Let's take a quick second to go back to the chat and see how everybody's doing. So let's see here. After the diplomat-friendly neighborhood diplomats, Dell is saying, spins a lie any size, suppresses uprisings just like flies. Look out, here comes the diplomats. Da, da, da. Jim, of course, dying or sort of really diving into his militant attitude. Stomp, stomp, stomp. Don't forget the amoeba. Oh, of course, we'll go back down to the Tholians in a second and just talk about the monster. And Chuck, of course, seems he's a football fan. He's more of a Tom Brady as far as an MVP than Francis Ngannou or Mike Tyson. All right. Well, let's take a second and look at that amoeba for the Tholians. So we've talked about monsters before. The counter doesn't necessarily mean anything. But when you see this counter there, this sort of represents from the original series, there was this giant single-celled organism that they encountered in space. There was this whole thing about getting in, then getting out, and dealing with that creature. And so that's what this kind of represents here, at least the icon. However, will it actually be an amoeba? Will it be something else? We don't know. It'll be interesting to sort of hear, potentially, from the Tholian player at some point, what it is. One of the good things about, if you could say a good thing about a monster, is once you destroy it, kill it, deal with it, you'll get a bump to your research and development. It depends on what the tech is. It depends on how much. Usually not more than 1 or 2 research points, but there may be a split of a number of different techs that you might get from an amoeba. That could be because of, something that you used in the encounter, something like a material or like a material science thing that you discover by dealing with it, or whatever the case is, it gives you a bonus to your research and development. So that's what that looks like. So let's take a quick second here. And if you're joining us, and you're catching us up to this point in the broadcast, I mean, goodness, we're 23 minutes in. If you are enjoying what you're seeing, then please consider subscribing. We are I'm really proud and happy of our community here as we're growing. The goal was 100 subscribers before the end of the year, and by New Year's Day, we got to 100 subscribers. We're currently, at the time of this broadcast, at 128 subscribers. So thank you so much for our continuing growing community here on Star Trek New Worlds. One of the reasons why we push the subscriber count is because subscriber numbers in YouTube unlock features. And for us, we're pushing towards the number 500 because it opens up the community tab in YouTube. All that means is it gives us another sort of avenue, channel, way to be able to push content or put content out there for you, whether it be polls or little posts and pictures or just another way to be able to engage with you on YouTube as a platform. And then, of course, as we sort of move forward, there are different milestones when it comes to YouTube in general, but fundamentally we're working towards that 500 number to be able to unlock new features in YouTube. So really appreciate you supporting us in that. If you are enjoying this content, then please, like I say, consider subscribing. And if you haven't already, give the video a thumbs up because the algorithm likes those likes, and of course the comments that you're putting in the chat live, or the comments if you're watching this on the replay. That really helps tickle the algorithm in the right way, and sort of passes this video on to all the people who enjoy Star Trek, wargaming, and turn-based strategy. So thank you so much for your support in that. Let's dive into one of my favorite factions, the Romulans. All right. So this is, again, turn 40, and here we are seeing the Romulan faction. A very interesting shift I'm noticing in some of their distribution. Again, their exploration pattern, very blobular, uniform. Blobular, what an adjective. Very uniform in the way that it's expanding. Let's take a quick look at their EP. Let's see if that's changed. Ooh, okay. So we can see, let's put this up top here. We can see that the Romulans have a 28.5 EP economy. That is, we'll have to take a look at the other turns, but as of right now, that is the second highest income in the game. That's pretty good. Now, granted, 28.5 versus the 28 of the Tholians, very similar. I believe the Hydrans are probably at 28 as well. We'll see as we move along, but 28.5, really good number when it comes for the Romulans. Let's take a quick look at their fleet cap. We can see, oh my goodness, they are, okay, they have 30 ship equivalents, and this is interesting. They have a 45 attack, 113 defense split. So it's about a little less than 50-50, probably pushing more towards like a 35-40% split. And what's really interesting, though, 30 ships and 113. It looks like they've got a fleet cap of 116, so there may be the odd cripple ship in there. Very, very interesting. Now, you'll notice, one of the things I notice when looking at this map is sort of the cluster of fleets or ships that are pushing out their expansion. There is a cluster in and around the northwestern area, which makes sense because they had a ship pop into, from our last live stream, you'll remember that there was a wormhole that had a ship pop out, Carnarvon ship, and they encountered that Carnarvon ship. I don't see a Carnarvon ship here. I'm going to guess it got stomped. That's just a guess. I'm going to guess that the Romulans destroyed it. We can also see that this Borat faction is really happy with the Romulans, and it looks like the diplomatic efforts are going to most likely, we'll see, result in them joining the Romulan Empire shortly here. We can see a combination of these fleets. First Legion, let's take a look at what's in First Legion, because I have a sense that's probably the fleet that did the stomping. So interesting to note here. The First Legion is a WWB and a WSN. So W are ships, 2-4-2, so a 2 attack, 4 defense, and a 2-2 split. The WFB, also a 1-4 ship. Very interesting that they're not really powerful ships. I'm wondering why they're there. I'm assuming they must have dealt with the ship. I mean, the Carnarvon ship that went through was crippled. It wasn't a huge threat, but interesting to see that the First Legion. Oh, of course you can't see that. There you go. Interesting to see that the First Legion is, a relatively not a significant threat of a fleet. Let's go down the list of those particular fleets. Let's look at the West Fleet. We can see that's primarily an exploration fleet. What is that name again? Tiercellus, again, an exploration fleet with a large exploration freighter and an escort. Leviathan. Let's look at Leviathan. Where are you? I'm looking for Leviathan. It's here somewhere. I obviously am blind and can't see it. There it is. Goodness gracious. Let's put this over here. So you can see that the concentration here of these fleets is predominantly exploration. And so the Romulan player is employing this strategy, which I really like, of clumping all their units into these fleets and then pushing that exploration and expansion. So we can see 1 large, 2 small exploration freighters, and of course some other ships to be able to support the exploration. So we won't dive into all their fleets, but we can see that there's a similar exploration pattern happening in the southwest and a big push on the eastern front. Very interesting. We can see, let's just take away the ships for a sec. You can see that there's an interesting base distribution here. Very interesting base distribution. So we've got a little bit of a, and we talked about this before, a little bit of a cardinal point, like true north, south, east, west kind of dynamic initially, with north and east being essentially straight lines, and then straight lines laterally to support. But then in the south, they have a totally different pattern, which is on the sort of the off-axis line of connection between these different hexes. So you can see along the narrow connection, narrow line connection, we've got a base south of the capital, and then from there it sort of continues that sort of normal hexagonal pattern. So very interesting to see how that's developing, and I'm sure it's just sort of like by happenstance, by opportunity. That's how the base distribution has occurred. But let's count it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 hexes out laterally in their what looks to be their most explored direction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So between 5 and 6 hexes in an easterly direction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a similar 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A similar thing in the westerly direction. It looks like they're getting a little bit more success east versus west, but again, really uniform, homogeneous kind of exploration. Really, really good. I think the Romulan player is really doing well. There's a lot of good stuff going on here, and if you can see, like the fleet that he's dealing with is predominantly these W era ships. He's got Y era ships. For example, if we look at the Romulan home fleet, I'm pretty sure we looked at this last turn, and we saw that, yeah, so he's got a Y-era Kingbird, a Y-era frigate. So he's got the Y-era technology. It's just he's just taking advantage of the ships that he has sort of in play right now. So that's really good. Really, really good. Let's take a quick second and go to the chat. Let's see. Jim is saying that the Hydrans are stuck at 29EP, so we'll get a chance to explore that in a moment. What with the rebellion at home, in the home system, and other things happening to see later in the show. So the Hydrans dealt with a rebellion of sorts in their home system. Their minor planet, the 3EP planet, rebelled, and so they lost the income on that planet, and we'll hopefully be able to see how they are managing dealing with that going forward. Let's see here. So, wow, Romulans start the beating. Oh, that's what Chuck's getting excited about, the potential beatdown, either of the Romulans or by the Romulans. I'm not sure which one. I have a feeling the Romulans could start a pretty good war if they decided to. Up to them. We'll see how that works. Let's see here. Who is playing the Romulans? Well, the Romulan player, I don't believe, is with us live, but the Romulan player is a fellow Canadian on the West Coast here in Canada. I'm coming to you live from Victoria, British Columbia, and he's sort of in my neighborhood, relatively speaking, and so he's having fun in that way. Yeah, Jim. So Jim's identifying him. Yeah, Dave Brewster. Dave is the Romulan player. It'll be really interesting to see how that works going forward. Okay, so we've talked about the Romulans. Let's take another look at our kitty cat friends, the Lyrans. So we can see here the Lyrans are, if you remember from our last episode, we had a Hydran ship pop through this wormhole that you see on the left-hand side of the screen, and they visited the Lyrans. Now, I don't see a ship there, so I'm assuming it was destroyed. But let's take a quick look at the data. Oh, this is so interesting. Okay, so we can see that the Lyrans are at 28.5 EP. Again, 28 for the Tholians, 20.5 for the Romulans, 28.5 for the Lyrans. We're all sort of in the same ballpark here when it comes to effectively equal incomes and EP. So very interesting to see. Let's take a look at their fleet cap. Fleet cap is okay, so there's the ship. Okay, so the Hydran ship is alive and well, we can see. The Lyrans having a total of 23 ship equivalents with a 51 attack, 113 split, so almost 50-50. Looking pretty good. Let's take a second and look at this Farstar's fleet that's gone to escort the Hydran Vol, a Vol being a Y-era frigate. As you can see, it's crippled. Let's see the Farstar's fleet. So we can see that this fleet has a, looks like a total of 4 ships, 2 frigates, 1 destroyer, and a cruiser, all W-era. So again, the W-era ship's not a big threat. However, I mean, when you're dealing with a crippled Y-era ship, W ships can be quite deadly, and certainly would stomp it if they wanted to. It looks like they're escorting it and taking it where they want to go. You can also see there's a YDD just below here, 2 of them at the base station, and exploration ship in the near vicinity. If memory serves, because of the supply, the Lyrans with supply 3, yep. So they had a slight sort of restriction about where they could go. It would seem as though because they built a base there. I'm not sure if that YFES is coming south or continuing to go northeast based on the concentration of cruisers and exploration cruisers or ships on this stretch in the sort of eastern, northeastern corner of the Lyran territory. I have a sense that the YFES is making its way down south, and that's where they're going to use it. You can see there's a YFES there down in this little pocket, and then one down here taking advantage of this last little trickle of unexplored space there. Also with a YFEL, that is the maximum number of exploration ships specifically that the Lyrans can make. The 2 Y-era survey ships, a large survey freighter, and then 3 of the small ones. Good to go. All right, let's take that off the screen real quick. And we can see here Apex. So Apex fleet, I have a feeling one of the things about the Lyrans is there. Of course, I'm having trouble finding Apex fleet. There we are. Boop. So yeah, they've got, they're starting to do this thing, which they're starting to form Y-era fleets. So we've talked about W and Y-era ships. The Lyrans are really starting to pump out their Y-era ships and starting to coalesce them in functional fleets that they can use to, do bad things to bad people. So we've got a fleet of YDDs there. Apex is on there essentially at this colony here. It looks like that it was recently converted not too long ago. The capital, which is noticeably sort of towards the eastern edge here, they've got Home Fleet there. And I imagine the Lyrans at Home Fleet are... Oh, wow. Okay, yep, predominantly Y ships. So we got a Y cruiser, W cruiser, a bunch of frigates, 4 of them, and then a troop transport, which they use to be able to do ground assaults. So we can talk about ground assaults in the combat episode, which was coming up, actually. I know I've talked about it now 2 weeks in a row. On Monday, you will find that the combat episode will be dropping. And so if you are looking for that episode, looking to find out about combat and how combat works in this game, be sure to hit that subscribe button, follow along, get notified, and like I say, coming out on Monday. So Lyrans are looking good. Gravity well, wormhole, doing a good job exploring. Again, this is only 2 turns difference, right, between then and now. The big thing here is that they are continuing to grow from an economic standpoint. Looks like we got some added chat here. Let's go back here. Lyrans are moving on the Remans. I don't know about that. We'll see. Let's see here. Okay, Jim, you missed a classic opportunity for a your mom joke. Okay. Can't always be a comedian. Got to give the opportunity to some other folks. Chuck's talking about transferring to the back end, so I imagine that's that YFES. And threatening Riemann territory. Get him, Dell. The Hydrans are doing a great job of just kind of cheering on everybody else to get into a fight. I find that interesting, especially when we look at their map in a moment. All right, let's take a look at the Gorn. The Gorn are coming up, and here we go. So the Gorn's doing really well. Right off the bat, I can see there's a wormhole. That's always exciting. Let's take a quick look at their EP. So they're continuing to grow. I think 24.5 EP is where they were last turn. So 24.5, again, not such a dramatic delta or difference from everybody else, but a little bit behind, just based on the amount of sort of luck and amount of territory they've explored. Let's take a look at their fleet cap. This should not be a surprise based on where the Gorn ship distribution at this point. 13 ship equivalents, 21-50 split. They're certainly one of the weaker fleets in the game, but that's only because Gorn ships in the early era suck. They're just not that good as far as like attack and defense and so on. But they are continuing to leverage and take advantage of what we were talking about before, which is this ability to really push the expansion. And you can see that if we remove the ships for a second, he's building out these bases in the bottom sort of southerly direction. You can see that there is this base built here. If we bring back the ships quickly, there's a convoy here. Looks like it's going to build a base as well. And again, just continuing to build out the range of supply to be able to take advantage of that exploration. Speaking of supply, let's take a quick look at Gorn's supply. You can see that essentially he's explored almost all the territory that he has supply access to. Although this is an interesting note. Look at this. What's the supply menu must be set at 2. Okay, there we go. Supply set to 3. Boom. So that's a little bit better. So now we can see there's a little stretch in the north that he can continue to explore, and then this chunk in the southwest. Third Fleet obviously just discovered a wormhole. That'll be very interesting. I would strongly encourage the Gorn to send something through that, see where it pops up. And then, of course, start research and exploring wormhole tech. One more hex there to be explored, but hopefully with this convoy potentially building a base, this Third Fleet can move its way down here and start exploring in a southerly direction if that's where you want to go. Again, not much to really say here. There's no more new planets. There's not a lot of no more new resources. But we can see, again, the Gorn player is really leveraging or doing his best to be able to explore on the edge of his exploration. We can see that, let's just look at the Gorn fleets and see about the exploration ships. So Expeditionary Fleet has a YFEL. We can see that he's got this survey ship here, which is doing its survey stuff. The battle cruiser, which again with a prime team on board is essentially as good as a YFES, or sorry, a survey cruiser. Second Fleet, let's look at Gorn's Second Fleet. As you can see, they've got an exploration ship there, continue to explore. And Third Fleet, probably the same thing. Survey cruiser or survey ship along with an escort. So really trying to maximize the exploration there. The only other thing is just sort of like build cruisers and if you can, and put prime teams on them and get them out. It's always a challenge managing the money because bases are expensive to build. You need those to be able to get the supply, to be able to get to explore and expand your borders. And then, of course, you need the ships to be able to leverage the exploration. So it's a chicken and egg thing. It's always a challenge to deal with. It's just a challenge. Chuck's saying, once I'm able to transit Hydran space. Okay, sorry. I jumped to the end there. Laren's moving on the Riemans. That's what Jim said last. Transfer to the back end. Not me, never, Chuck says. I think that's a little sarcastic. Threatening Riemann territory. Got to stir the pot. once I'm able to transit Hydran space, Chuck's saying I think he's going to stir the pot himself. We'll see how that goes. All right. So since we were just looking at the Lyrans and the Gors, let's take a quick look to the Fearsome 4. And here we go. This is a zoomed out perspective. Again, this is turn 40. And we can see here everybody down the right-hand side. So, oh, interesting. So just initially, we can see here that the Carnarvon ship that popped up here isn't seeing any Romulans around it. So what that makes me think is that the Romulans have pulled back away from where they encountered him, and the Carnarvon's not moving. Maybe there's a roleplay thing going on there. Maybe maybe we can find out. Terry is the Terry, you with us? I don't see Terry in the chat, but Terry is are the Carnarvons, and Dave's not with us today, and he's going to be he's playing the Romulans. So it'd be interesting to see if there's any interaction between those two. Let's start with the top. So we'll do a quick EP and fleet cap walk around. So let's see here. The Carnarvons are at a 26 EP. The Hydrans are at 29. The ISC 27.5. And that's all. No, that can't be right. Carnarvon, Hydran, ISC. ISC. Oh, I'm blind again. The Remans 29. Goodness gracious. Okay, so what's really interesting about this? Hydrans and the Remans equal economies, but if you look at the map, the Hydrans cover far more territory than the Remans. So very interesting to see that dynamic of smaller space, more compact, economy. But yeah, so interesting. Again, not too much of a delta or difference between all the different factions, all sort of close and huddling around this sort of high middle 20s number. The 29, though, is certainly leading the pack. So 28.5, 29, that seems to be sort of where things are. Let's take a quick look at the fleet cap, and let's see here. So we've got the Carnarvons with 28 ships. Again, big fleet. 53-127 split. So not a huge amount of attack factors relative to their defense, but nonetheless good. The Hydrans have 25 ships, so another large fleet, but interesting to note the 46-95 split. I have a sense, of course, that if the Carnarvon built 3 more ships, or rather if the Hydrans built 3 more ships, they would probably be tying the Carnarvons in attack factors. Not sure about defense factors. We'll see. The ISC with 16 ships, so trailing the rest here, a 43-84 split as far as attack and defense. So still like competent and capable when it comes to the actual offensive power they bring to a fight, just not a lot of ships. The Remans, 20 ship equivalents and a 57-92 split. So interesting to see that they are lower in ship count, but they bring the highest amount of offensive firepower on this map right now. So very interesting. You can see at the top, sort of above my head here, you can see that the Lyrans have sort of appeared on the Hydran version of this map. So they can see each other there. That's great. And let's take a look at the Remans, the 29 EP monsters that they are. Let's take away the ships real quick. We can see that there's a number of resources that they've discovered on the edge of their territory. Looks like they decimated this particular planet. So they're getting, or the colony, so they're getting 1 EP from that. So that's good. Very unhappy, understandably, because they got decimated. So that looks to be a recent conquer. So that might explain why they went from 25 to 29. They've basically discovered a couple of resources and conquered another faction. Let's bring the ships back real quick so we can see that there's exploration. We've got a cruiser with a prime team over top that planet. So a lot of exploration moving to the edge of the map, which is very interesting. Good to do, incidentally, because once you sort of finish that level of exploration, then you can just redistribute or move those ships into sort of moving northwest or west or southwest. I mean, in this case, the Remans, once they explore the border in that northern bit, all they got to do is move west. Like the Pet Shop Boy said, go west. That's what they got. So they'll be able to really concentrate their exploration efforts in that way. And it's sort of a more efficient use of their resources. We can see that the Orions, again, in Reman space, I thought the Remans were going to stomp them, but because the Remans have this Prometheus fleet here, which has 4 frigates, a destroyer, and 2 cruisers. So it looked like they were going to stomp them, but it looks like I was wrong. They're just sitting there, sitting pretty. Convoys, looks like the convoys are in position to be able to build out some bases. 3 supply range seems to be in effect. And yeah, the Remans are doing a really good job based on EP, based on fleet count, but like all the metrics are good. The only thing is really the number of ships, but that's not really a concern for them because their nearest neighbor is the ISC, and the ISC have less ships and less firepower than they do. So not too much to be concerned about there. The only criteria, the only thing to maybe be thinking of, and this would be a little bit of metagaming, is the neighbors, right? Like if you encounter the Lyrans, what's that going to look like? At the end of the day, from a role-playing perspective, the Remans are doing really well. They have no reason to change their strategy. They are just kicking butt and taking names. Going down to the ISC. So the ISC had this monster in their space. I'll be very interested if Paul is in the chat. If Paul, you're in the chat, then pipe up and let us know what happened for you with this monster. We can see here that we've got a concentration of fleets on R17, and I have a feeling those are the fleets that were used to deal with the monster. Let's pull up the ISC. Where are we here? The named echelons. So we can see that we've got truth, justice, integrity. Integrity? Is it integrity? So we've got integrity, which was a YCL. Justice, which was a YCL. What else we have here? Destiny. There's Truth Fleet. So we have a number of fleets here. They're combining a bunch of frigates and YCLs, and there's a YCA there. I see Order Fleet, although where did Order Fleet's over here, and Order Fleet at the homeworld has some crippled frigates. I'm guessing that's the result of a fight. But we don't see the monster on the map. So if we don't see the monster on the map, of course, I'm realizing you can't see that. There we go. So let's go back through that. So we got Integrity Fleet has a YCL. Justice Fleet has a YCL. Order Fleet has these crippled frigates, which is at their homeworld here. And then, of course, Truth Fleet has, again, frigates, YCL, YCA, and that's located here at this base. So, yeah, it's a very interesting sort of scenario. I think, again, that's all based on what's happened with the monster. It'd be very interesting to hear what happened. Interesting to note that we can see here that the developing planet here in Romeo 16 got stomped, and they are recovering. That was also, it looks like, based on the dates that I'm seeing here, it looks like that's all old news. Thanks for catching up there, Tony. So we can see that there's a diplomat on this colony trying to make them less hostile, now unhappy, hopefully maybe happy at some point. Happy planets grow faster. We'll see how that goes. But basically what we're looking at here is we remove the ships. We can see a continued development and exploration to the west. Again, Pet Shop Boys, Q theme song. The bases are being built along the border with the Hydrans, and you can see not a lot of work going on the border with the Remans. So that's good. Let's head down and deal with the Hydrans. As I said at the beginning of the episode, the Hydrans are having a bumpy encounter. When I say that, I mean in tongue-in-cheek. They encountered a Klingon faction, and the Klingon faction is kicking butt and taking names. You can see here that there is a crippled tug and a crippled WSR. It would seem that they probably entered, foolishly, into the neutral zone around this Klingon planet, and the Klingons decided to punch back. So, I mean, being the Klingon player, I'm all fan and all supportive of all things Klingon. Let's take a look at this Klingon fleet. So the Klingon Apocalypse fleet. Let's see here. Battle group. No. Let's find. There it is. Battle group Apocalypse. Okay, so we can see that the Battle group Apocalypse has a cruiser, D4. These are all Y-era ships. It has 2 F4s or destroyers, and it looks like 3 frigates. Now, one of the frigates is crippled based on probably this encounter here. And yeah, they popped them or attacked them and pushed them out of their neutral zone. So it looks as though, it seems as though, the Hydrans were continuing to explore and expand around the neutral zone of this planet. So neutral zones traditionally are a border or a no-go zone for most factions. Like, no one sends ships into a neutral zone. It's like a DMZ. And when you send ships into those areas, and especially the non-player factions are not happy with you, it is likely that they will go out and do something about it. Whether they will engage you, ask you to leave, or just not bother talking and blow you to smithereens, which is what obviously the Klingons did here. They are very hostile against the Hydrans. So very interesting to see how this is going to play out here, because I have a feeling the Hydrans are going to get organized and want to stomp them. But as we discussed or made reference to earlier, the Hydran capital is going through a bit of a problem. You can see here that there is a blue or white with a blue icon planet in the home system of the Hydran faction. It is an independent planet. What ended up happening here was there was a random event that selected a unhappy, or in this case, I believe it was a not a hostile, but an unhappy planet. It was the only unhappy planet in the Empire, and so it hit this particular planet, which was Rebellion. And so, yeah, now you've got a minor faction that's got its own foothold inside the Hydran system, which is causing all sorts of headaches for the Hydran player. Not only does it lose him 3 EP, which, to be fair, if he had that 3 EP, he'd be at 32, or the most, like the biggest economy of the game. Yeah, it's causing issues. So, what's he got in his home system to help deal with that? Oh, this is interesting. It looks as though there is a... What is that fleet? Home fleet. Hold on. That's not a Pravian fleet. That's something else. Minor fleets. Minor empires. There's no minor empires. What is it? Hey, Jim, let me know what that fleet is that's in your home system there. I'd be very curious as to what faction they are, so I can find it here. If they're orange, well, let's just find out. We'll go to fleet caps, and we can see we got Romulan. Maybe it is Pravian. Let's look at the Pravian. Pravian, what's the name of this fleet? It is home fleet. So Pravian home. No, it's not Pravian. It's a Romulan, Pravian, Orion, Lyran, Kazinti, Riemann, ISC, Carnivon. What is that? Oh, that's the Rebellion? Is that a Rebellion fleet? It's the fleet at the independent planet. Okay, it's the Win. Okay, so let me just so I can see what it is. Let's look at minor fleets. Look at the Win and Win home fleet. Boom. Okay, so the Win. So this is the rebellious folks. They have a Vol or a Y-era frigate in the home system, and then we've got the Hydrans with the second, third, and home fleet. So Hydrans, second, Hydrans, third, Hydrans, home. So what we can see here is the Hydrans have a plethora of frigates. 2 Vols, 1 Vol, 2 Vols. So they have 5 Vols, 5 frigates in the home system, and old Colony Squadron. So let's see, what's old Colony Squadron? Old Colony Squadron is the 3 Musketeers. So they have basically a whole bunch of frigates that they potentially could bring to bear on that planet, as well as a diplomat. So it'll be interesting to see how they decide to deal with this particular problem. Are they going to stomp the planet? If they do, obviously it will be devastated, and they won't get 3 EP from it. They'll get 1, and it'll take 10 turns for that sort of planet to recover. It'll be interesting to see how that works. Above and beyond that, we can see, let's take away the ships real quick. Let's look at the distribution of bases. We can see that the base distribution for the Hydrans continues in their 3 hex pattern. You can see this, there's 3 here, 3 here, 3 here. They're really leveraging the 3 supply, which is good for exploration. We can see the sort of the push, I'll call it a push, to the west. Obviously, they were pushing to the west and they encountered the Klingons. They're doing it sort of in the southwesterly area here as well. And you can see that there is a little more of redundancy built in with the 2 hex, a little bit to the south, a little bit to the northwest or northeast here. But there's an inconsistent build pattern. We'll see how that develops going forward. Really interesting. All right. Other than that, we've got various fleets scattered around. Looks like most of them are focusing on the home system rebellion. And then lastly, let's talk about the Orions up here. There's a very interesting combination of ships, a YCA, a WDR, a YCR. There is a lot of Orions floating around in Hydran space. I'm curious, we talked about the Orions. I'd be curious to find out what the Hydrans are doing with the Orions, that they're allowing them to fly all these ships around. Very interesting. Okay, let's take a look at the Carnies, Le Carnivon. What I find particularly interesting about the Carnivons is they're big and they're bad when it comes to their fleet. Just as a reminder, their fleet, 28 ships, 53 attack, 127 defense. Pretty big fleet overall. Most of it at the home, on their home system, although you can see here that they've discovered a Paravian planet, very hostile to them, so it looks like things are about to get rough. The Carnivon Den, let's see here, Den fleet is a YCA, 2 YCAs, there's a YCC, and they're moving towards this planet. Now, the question is, will they be able to destroy / take that planet with just 2 YCAs and a YCC? Well, their YCAs are 3/6s. The YCC is a 3/7. If they do fight that battle, it would be interesting to see what happens because, of course, the Paravians only have a frigate. They've got a base station, which is a 6 attack. And with the planetary ground base, that makes a 7 attack. So similar attack factors, but the thing about the Paravians, they have an EW advantage. And of course, they can soak up more damage with their base than perhaps the Carnivons can. Although, you know, 3/7, 3/6, I don't know, we'll see. It'll be interesting to see if they choose to attack with that fleet of 3 ships and what the results of that attack are. Yeah, like I say, very interesting to see how that goes. Also interesting to note as I take away the ships here, the sort of distribution of bases. So we've got 3 to the colony, which provides supply. Then we've got 2 to this base, which was built. And it would seem as though they may be looking to build a base here based on where the position of this convoy. If they build a base here, not only are they sort of blocking in the Paravians, which is good, but that would indicate a substantial shift in their base building strategy. Basically, they're going to every 2 hexes now as opposed to 3. And yeah, and they're continuing to move in this westerly direction. So very, very interesting. All right, so that was the Fearsome Four. We got the Remans, the ISC, the Hydrans, and the Carnivons. All of them looks like they're having all sorts of fun in their various spaces, dealing with minor factions, recently stomping them, or having their ships stomped by them. So very interesting to see whether it's Paravians or Klingons or other factions that they're dealing with, monsters in the case of the ISC, all sorts of interesting speed bumps along the way for their various levels of development. Let's take a quick look at the chat here. We can see that William has joined us. Paul saying that he smashed the monster. Very interested to see what you got out of that. Although, you know, that's sort of, you know, top secret if you want to keep that secret. Daniel Eastland is our game master. Okay, William still learning Vassal with an F&E opponent. Absolutely, Daniel. Cool. It's very interesting rule set. So we're talking about Jim's mentioning the win being what I was looking for there in the independent fleet there. Sparta Kermit is what Bill's saying, making, of course, reference to Spartacus. That's what's happening, of course, on the Hydran minor system there. Hydrax support. Okay. Jim, they are surveying for the Star Empire of Hydrax. Okay. That's what the Orions are doing. I'm taking it that the Orions are doing surveying missions for the Hydrans. It'll be interesting to see, maybe at a later date, understand how much the Hydrans are spending to get the Tholians or the Orions to do that for them. Very, very interesting. Okay, so so far we have talked about the Federation and the Tholians. We've talked about the Romulans. We've talked about the Lyrans. We've talked about the Gorn. And we talked about the Fearsome Four. There seems to be somebody missing. Oh, yes. It's the Klingons. Let's talk about the Klingons. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Klingon map. Turn 40 here again as a reminder. Very interesting to see. So let's do, in all fairness, the EP and fleet cap discussion first. You can see here that the Klingons are stuck at a 31.5 EP. No big changes in that way. And when it comes to fleet cap, let's slide this over. You can see that the Klingons have 18 ship equivalents, a 40-74 split, with a fleet cap of 75. So what are we seeing here? There's a couple of sort of interesting interactions. First of all, we, as maybe previously mentioned, we had the interaction with the Borat, which is this minor faction down below. They are incredibly hostile to us. They blew up one of our exploration freighters. And so as a result, we are manning some ships or sending some ships to the YBS that is right on the cusp of their system. Now, what's interesting, we talked about before how if you have stuff in somebody's neutral zone, it can make them upset with you. This base pre-existed, or this base was there before we discovered the Borat. So I'm not creating it. I didn't build it there after discovering them. It was already there. But nonetheless, we know that the Borat are hostile to me already. So interesting to see. This is Joint Task Force Gamma. So let's take a quick look at Joint Task Force Gamma. And as you can see here, we got a D4C, so it's a command cruiser, and 2 frigates. So nothing too crazy. It's a command cruiser, 2 frigates on a base, basically protecting that base, making sure that it doesn't get popped in some way, shape, or form. The second big piece of news is the discovery of more kitty cats. Now, in previous episodes, previous live streams, we talked about the Lyrans and the Carnivons that we explored or discovered early on. So if we move these ships and bases, we saw that we got Felis Prime, which was the location of the Lyrans, and Fenris Omega, which was the location of the Carnivons. Now, what we see here is we've got the Kzinti. Now, the Kzinti are like space tigers versus the Lyrans, which are like space mountain lions or lynx. So they've discovered, they've popped up here. So what's interesting about this particular discovery? Twofold. One, they're hostile. Like, they're hostile H minor right off the top. They just bloody well hate us. Okay, fair enough. 2, they have a minor planet, not a developing planet. So it's a minor planet with a space, a YDK, so Y aerospace dock. Why is that important? They can repair more It's a harder target to beat, as you can see here, 16 defense. And let's take a look at the Kzinti Night Fleet. This is, by the way, the first time I'm seeing this as well. So let's take a look. Okay, so this is very, very interesting. They have a YCC, so similar to my D4C. So same split, 4-6. They have a YCL, which is a 2-5, so that's not an insignificant ship. And they got 3 frigates. Why is that important? That's a lot. At this point in the game, based on the interactions we've had with all the different factions, that's a lot. That's a lot of ships. That's a lot for a minor faction, and it's a minor planet. Very similar to what the Hydrans are encountering with the Klingons, this faction here is going to be a pain in my posterior. So, yeah, good times. They are certainly not going to be fun to play with. They are going to make things very difficult. So dealing with them is going to be fun because, of course, they're already hostile to me, and they don't like me at all. Joint Task Force Alpha is the fleet that encountered them. Let's take a quick look at what's in JTFA. So we can see that we've got a D3 cruiser, so not equivalent to their command cruiser, but it's a cruiser. And then we've got a couple of E1s, so that's W era frigates. So this is a remnant of our W era fleet that was used in the early stages of the game. So that's what that looks like. Not a big fleet at all, not a powerful fleet at all, but enough to be able to, back away, and we'll deal with that as we go. We can see that there's a YFES here as well. Hopefully it can sort of escape without getting clubbed. And a convoy, as you can see down below here, just below. We have an E2 positioned here on on this map, Papa 43, and within sort of reaction distance to be able to support these various units here, the base and the convoy, if attacked. Again, they're hostile. There's a chance they might reach out and touch me in some way, shape, or form. And on the East Coast, or on the east side here, you can see there's just some exploration going on between Home Fleet and Joint Task Force Bravo, which are, these are just remnants like JTFA of the W era fleet that was built in the early stages of the campaign. And then, of course, this exploration ship. What you will notice is a lack of an exploration freighter in the north because we had a tragic accident last turn, or last 2 turns ago, and that ship was destroyed. Real pain in the butt. Also, when it comes to the Orions, you will notice that we had some units down here in the Romeo 51 hex. They're no longer there. Why? Because an Orion pirate decided to attack us, and the size and power of that ship was so significant that my little frigate escort couldn't hold it off. So the Orions have caused some butt pain for me in a not insignificant way, and I'm encountering these minor factions. What to do, how to deal with it, oh my goodness, I don't know. The Hydrans are getting all hot and bothered because they've encountered the Klingons, and the Klingons reached out and touched them. I'm dealing with not 1, but 2 minor factions and a bunch of Orion pirate pain. So we'll see how that goes going forward, but needless to say, it is a irritating, challenging piece to deal with. Let's take a look at the chat real quick. We can see here that okay, so what do we got? Rebellion, talking about the Hydrax. Seems the Klingons have built in a neutral zone. I suppose a built-in neutral zone with these minor factions. I suppose that's one way to look at it. Tony, would you like to rent a Gorn Commando Destroyer? Interesting option. How can you get it to me? Chuck, gonna take some serious diplomacy to get them to flip. Well, yes, it would if diplomacy was the option, or 2 commando destroyers. It is all the Hydrans' fault. I completely agree. I think the Hydrans are obviously, based on the number of Hydrans, or the number of Orions that they have floating around in their space, they're obviously using Orions in some various conniving way, and somehow, some way, they're organizing, orchestrating, creating problems for all of us. I think we should all unite and stomp out the Hydran/Orion threat that the Hydrans are organizing. So with that being said, Very interested to see how these turns are progressing. Again, we are at turn 40 in this campaign. Turn 40 being nothing too crazy as far as the progress in the overall campaign. It is I would say, based on where everybody is and the fact that we can see the Fed and the Tholian player, the Fearsome Four on the right, and we know where essentially everybody is, ballpark. I think it's really just a matter of time, like a matter of turns, before there is a serious encounter with the three players that are currently isolated: the Romulans, the Klingons, and the Gorn. I think the Gorn, maybe if we're lucky, those three will encounter each other and still stay isolated from everybody else. We'll have three pockets. We'll have essentially the Lyran Fearsome Four contingent, we'll have the Tholian Federation contingent, and then we'll have the trifecta of the Romulan, Gorn, and Klingons. It'll be interesting to see how this all kind of works out and how it evolves going forward through the game. But if this is something that you like, if you like watching and hearing the evolving story of the campaign here in Star Trek New Worlds, then please hit that subscribe button. Help us, support us, get to that 500 number, if only to be able to unlock features within YouTube. Join us on our Facebook page, which is posted at the very top of the chat in this episode. And you can join us there, and you can follow along. And if you are interested in playing in future campaigns, you can reach out to us there. Message us at the Facebook page, and we can. We're currently creating a list of players that we will reach out to at the start of the new and next campaign. Granted, that might be a while considering we're at turn 40 and we're just starting to bump into each other. But if that's something you're interested in, playing, being involved, getting to know this particular game, Federation and Empire played in a 4X way, then please head over to our Facebook page. Again, the link is in the chat. I'll also add it to the comments and pin it to the top of this video after it goes live, or after we're done the live stream. And we can go from there. Really appreciate you guys joining us today. If this, again, is something that you enjoyed and you liked, hit that thumbs up button. Help us spread the word about Federation Empire, all things Star Trek, and the fun that we like to have playing these turn-based strategy games with you online in this way. Join us, be part of our community. We love to be able to sort of talk trash and rile each other up when it comes to this gameplay as we go forward. So looking forward to seeing you guys in the next episode coming next week. And of course, the combat, if you're interested in finding out more about the rules and how combat works in this particular campaign, not only in the F&E rule set, but also in this campaign, that video will be coming out on Monday. Make sure to hit the notifications when you subscribe so that you know when those videos go live, when they hit. And of course, you'll get notifications on these live streams every Saturday. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. I will see you in the next episode. Bye for now.